What was that you were mentioning about the APCs in Africa, the armored personnel carriers in
Yeah,
the book?
yeah, they look like armored personnel carriers. I'm not sure how. I'm sure they'll stop a bullet, but
Yeah.
these things look like the Humvees that are armored, but they're just like 6 or 7 times bigger
Hmm.
because 'cause they'll carry 20 people, and all their supplies and everything they need for 3 weeks out in the jungle, or the desert, so
Hmm. What organization's doing that?
that's overland missions.
Okay.
Yeah, they showed me pictures of the current batch of trucks they're building, and they're just amazing.
Hmm.
So
That's Africa.
that's in Africa. It's in Zambia.
Okay.
Yeah, it was fun. They uh, they they have learned. They know what they're doing, and
Okay.
they have a huge base.
What are they doing?
What are they doing?
What are they doing?
They are going a lot into areas where there are unreached people groups with the gospel.
Hmm.
They do evangelism, discipleship primarily, but they have missionaries who live near the base, and so they do expeditions. They call them expeditions
Mm.
to reach people who've never met Jesus. Very,
How's their reach going? Like, are they getting pushback? Are they able to get in there?
oh no, it's been amazing. They're doing a real receptivity. Saw a video about a month ago where it was the very first time this tribe had heard anything about Jesus, God. There was just any dialogue at all, no teaching. And just began to, this was Phil Smethers, who's the founder of Overland Missions. He began to talk about a God who uh, came in our likeness, and so we could understand him. And that simple thought opened them
Hmm.
uh, to be able to hear and listen to the gospel. It's really, really fascinating.
Hmm.
They were, and very receptive, actually.
Yeah.
So it's fun to watch that.
Yeah. It's hard to get back there too. It's like very rural.
Oh, it is. I
Yeah.
mean, it takes a lot of
I
effort.
think rural doesn't even quite describe it
Yeah,
properly.
we think
Yeah.
the woods of East Texas. We're not rural in that
No, we
sense.
have gas stations around the corner.
We have and convenience stores are handy, so we can get a Diet Coke and go.
Yeah.
Uh,
But I don't know about that Coke.
Something else.
But yeah. If that's
But
your thing.
very committed to reaching them, and so they do it well. I mean, they've
Mhm.
got lots of equipment support, people that are given to committed to reaching them, and it's and they're growing. It's just a
How long have they been doing it for?
uh, 25 years.
Okay.
25 years.
And then are these friends of yours? You're affiliated?
Just met,
Just
actually,
met.
just met. Phil was speaking at a missions conference that Joyce and I go to called the 10 Cities Conference. And there are various works, mission organizations who they're like family. There's a lot of support that goes on. This particular church in Houston called Dwelling Place was, we attended that conference they were uh, sponsoring and began to meet some of these mission works. And the works themselves are amazing, amazing people. But Phil and his wife spoke last year, uh, loved the not only their messaging, but just who they are in the Lord. So I got to know them a little bit this last year. He spoke this time, and we just started a friendship and began to hear what they're doing and the messaging, and I really respected it. So I was excited to kind of learn a little bit about
Mhm.
overland missions. So I didn't know much before that. So
Okay.
we'll see what the friendship goes.
Yeah. All right, John, you wanna give a quick introduction for the podcast?
Oh, okay. John Foster. I am a native Texan. I used to say native Houstonian, but I left
Mm,
about 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
yeah.
Uh,
Texas is bigger than just Houston,
it's just,
as most people know. Have you ever had people who, like, you'll say, "Hey, I'm from Texas," and they'll say, "Oh, do you know so and so?"
oh
I'm
yes,
like, "Oh, it's a big state."
absolutely.
Yeah.
I was head of a mission agency years ago, we had a printing press in Japan, and we were doing a dedication for a brand new printing press to print Bibles
Mm,
for China, different things. And I'll tell you about getting caught smuggling Bibles sometime. The
sure.
And so we'd go there, and they say, "Oh, you're from Texas," and I said, "Well, how many horses do you have?" you know, and where are your boots? And so it's really kind of fun.
Mhm.
One of the missionaries uh, had been there. He when he went to Japan, he went tried to go native. He tried to be like them, and he was learning the language, learning to build relationship, and wasn't making much progress. And so he reverted back to the guy was actually from California, but he started dressing like a Texan. He started wearing a cowboy
Okay.
hat, belt, big old belt, boots, and all. And he found that they loved it and
Generates more
just
interest, yeah.
generous, much. It was very welcoming,
Yeah.
So, he is adopted Texan.
Well, given they're so culturally, I mean, extreme is the wrong word, but they're very cultured in the way they do things, and so if you try to emulate them, it might be a little insulting, maybe?
It is a bit, and that's you want to you want to be welcomed. You want to,
Mhm.
build a rapport, but it's easier to build a rapport and be who you are
Mhm.
than it is to try to emulate.
Yeah, I think authenticity is valuable in their
They love that,
culture.
and there's a deeper respect for that. So,
But I cut you off, you were as you
no,
were
it's
going through
fine.
your introduction?
Oh, it's no worries. I grew up in Houston, east side of Houston, in the near steel mill where my folks worked, and uh, uh, played sports and football and all for a school now that's now playing for the state championship every year.
Okay,
Yeah, we were
alright.
terrible when I
You're
was
terrible.
there.
What happened?
They,
You left the team? No.
I think that was really part of it. It went on a better trajectory.
Mm.
Actually, just population changed. It experienced a lot of growth, and
Coaches go a long way with smaller teams, and yeah.
they do. But uh, I loved it.
That's
Uh,
the important part. We had, Brian Trotty in here the other day. He's a athletic trainer at, NAC High School or
mhm,
yeah, NAC High.
mhm.
So that's we talked mostly about sports the
Yeah,
whole time. So
it's
yeah,
fun. It's
cool with
fun.
us.
Yeah, I played quarterback in high school. Uh, Baseball, was not that good at basketball. I was the sixth man on a five-man rotation,
Mm,
basketball.
mm,
Um,
on the bench.
I what happened was I would go they'd start the game, was on the bench to start, and then they'd put me in, and then I'd rotate to every position except center.
Mm,
So I got to play. It's just that I was never the starting,
gotcha,
wasn't good enough for that. Uh,
gotcha.
uh, but
Well, I'm quite like inept at sports. Like I think the most that we played was volleyball or whatnot at Bible camp, but otherwise I never really. Maybe a little bit of field baseball. You saw me at the men's retreat. I did
I thought
horrible.
you did okay.
I threw the bat across the field.
Well, I went to, I was decent enough to get a football scholarship to,
Oh,
what used to be Northeast Louisiana University. It's now, University of Louisiana at Monroe. And
so were you fast? Because you're not like you're not a massive guy.
no, in fact, I would try to gain weight every summer. Try to put on weight, and I'd put on, and it was really, I was doing good to get 10 pounds on. And every summer, and when the summer practices started and the heat came up, I would get sick, and I couldn't figure it out. And finally figured out I was allergic to the whatever they were killing the grass with
Ooh,
to line the field, and I was
ooh.
allergic to it. And
Back in those days too, they were. I mean, there's nasty stuff nowadays, but they were killing it with some nasty
oh yeah,
stuff back
yeah,
then.
yeah, it was
Little DDT or
real stuff.
Agent Orange.
So I kept, I was 165 pounds, I guess, dripping wet in my uniform. So
Mm,
not the biggest, not the fastest, but I could throw. And so
gotcha.
uh, we would throw 30, 35 times a game. Uh, that's kind of mostly what we did. But and so I went college on that, and with my wide receiver, kind of Scott Brady, who I grew up with,
Mm,
and great receiver. And he he and I went together, and over the summer before we got there that freshman year, they changed head coaches who put in a very innovative offense called the wishbone, and at the time, and so in essence, the wishbone is the quarterback is actually a glorified running back,
Okay.
and I was not that. So I no longer fit their offensive scheme.
Gotcha.
So they put me on defensive end, which at 165 pounds, I was getting crushed.
Yeah.
Practices weren't fun.
Still
So
suffer any injuries from those days?
I did. I separated a shoulder that I never really got fixed, and so it still gives me
Mm.
trouble many years ago. I did ended up transferring to Baylor. I tell people to get a real education. The truth is, I just loved it. I just loved Baylor. My cousin was going there,
Yeah.
and so I was too small for obviously Southwest Conference at the time. So I tried out for the baseball team and did well. Loved it, but they were too deep. Two players deep on the infield, which is where I played, and
Mhm.
so I tried out for pitcher. Two players deep, scholarship players. So I wasn't going to break in as a non-scholarship player.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
in any event,
Well, go ahead.
I tried out for pitcher, and I was again the eighth man on a 7-man rotation. So
Gotcha.
just didn't quite make it.
Yeah. What were you going to school for?
Ended up going to school for a finance major and sort of undergraduate and then minor in accounting.
Okay. Cool.
So
So where'd you go from there?
I went into my first job was in evangelism. Had nothing to do with
Okay.
accounting.
There's a lot of people these days who they don't do what they went to school for.
Well, it was a ministry I'd gotten involved with. Uh, it was it was called Peacemaker Ministries, and it was essentially a coffee house. And this was back. i- This was back. Okay, I'm really dating myself. This is like early 70s.
Okay.
And the Jesus movement was in full swing, late 68 and
Mhm.
69, early 70s. And we were just hippies sold out to Jesus, and I went and worked there for the first year after graduating from Baylor. I think I made the uh, grand total of $25 a week, and I think a few pennies that came in off the newsletter kind of
Mm.
thing.
It was worth more back then, though.
Yeah,
A little
well,
bit more. 25 still. That's still not
it
much,
was pretty small.
but yeah.
Couldn't pay rent. It wasn't enough to pay our rent.
Yeah.
So, um, but
Yep.
we would have kids come in on a weekend. We would see, a couple hundred kids come in. We had uh, rock bands, Jesus
Mhm.
bands, and we would see many, many, many kids come to Jesus. And we did a Bible study to bring do some discipleship. So it was a tough year, but a great year. Saw
Mhm.
a lot of fruit out of it.
Yeah.
But then ended up at had to get a real job. So
Mhm.
ended up going into banking, went into trust banking, uh,
Okay.
and all. So I did that for about 5 years. And then uh,
Is that an exciting career?
it's,
I
it's
mean, you never know till you're in it. Like, it sounds like it must
honestly,
be, but you never know.
it's, I wasn't the sales oriented type. So I was more the fiduciary or custodian or
Mm.
steward, and so I managed people's assets. And for instance, one of my clients was a very wealthy old, came from a drilling company and made tons and tons of money, well known in Houston, and uh, they had a trust for their kids and grandkids. And so I managed those trusts. And so the grandkids would call and say, "Hey, I want to buy a motorcycle." And I'd go, "I'm thinking your grandfather probably does not want you to have a motorcycle."
Mhm.
And I said, "Why are you asking me this?" And he said, "Well, Granddad told me I should talk to you about it." And I'm thinking, Granddad doesn't want to tell him no. So
Yeah.
I would say, "Let me think about it and see where things are." I'd call Granddad and say, "Do you want him to have a motorcycle?" He said, "No, it's why I sent him to you. You can tell him no." So, but it's good. Some great people, I loved the banking as a family. Once you, it's a very It's a very good community to work in, so I loved it, but felt like the grass was a little greener, and I ended up doing financial planning and moving into more accounting-oriented
Mm,
things where I was either a controller or a CFO for some bunch of small companies.
okay.
Uh, so I did that for a number of years. Uh, got my sat for my CPA license. I had almost enough hours to get it, so I went back to University of Houston, took a few courses to get enough hours to sit for the exam,
Mhm.
uh, and I did that. So I was on that trajectory um, for several years until we sold. I sold a company, a security company, and I was off for 2 or 3 months, had some severance trying to figure out what to do, and I was really praying about it. I had a my close friend who was a roommate in college had founded a mission organization, uh, and they were planting churches, mostly South America, Cuba, and they would take Americans down, do a lot of evangelism, and then they worked with the local, uh, person who was gonna be leader or pastor there,
Mm,
and they would see, a lot of fruit from it, a lot of churches getting planted, and he wanted me to come help do that. I'd gotten a job offer from US Sprint too, who was just emerging what, you know, data centers and communications, T1 communication, all the
mhm.
stuff that has now commonplace. Um,
When the internet was being born?
it was really being born at the time, and so this was a good opportunity to go there and get into that, and I felt that. Uh, but as I prayed about it, I didn't really have a peace about either one, and
Mm,
so I went to my pastors at the church. I knew them well. I was leading a lot of ministry there, and met with them, and they asked me, which one of those opportunities is your heart leaning toward?" And I said, "Well, honestly, neither one." I'd been wrestling with it because I was still back in the day, I was thinking that there is a secular world and a spiritual world, and I had to pick one or the other
mm,
to work in. And I was wrestling with it because I was praying, Lord, obviously, planting churches is the more spiritual thing I can do.
mhm,
And the Lord really checked me on it. And I felt like He said, John, the most spiritual thing you can do is what I give you to do. And I'm thinking, it really is about assignment. It really is that. And
hmm,
so I quit worrying about the secular, non secular, it's all one world,
mhm.
and really focused on assignment. And so I'd been through that process when I met with pastors and told them neither one I'm drawn to. And they said, well, good. We want you to pray about joining us on the pastoral team. So I jumped out of the business world into pastoral ministry for about 10 years,
So, like, straight out, so you just
straight out.
left one behind and
Just, you know,
you weren't double dipping.
I didn't. No. My first day on the job as a pastor, we left for a fishing retreat.
Mm.
So I said, I can do this job. Yeah.
Yeah.
This
Mm.
works. So
You
I
like
did that.
you
I
like
did that,
fishing?
but I love fishing, honestly.
You a
So,
fly fisher or you a
oh, I'm,
what's your style? You seem like a fly fisher, but
I love doing it. I mean, but fly fishing and,
East Texas.
is not that
It
easy.
can be done.
I'm sure it can. It's just you got to know more than I know. I think I need a mentor. I just need somebody who knows.
Mm,
Uh, but I love it. I'm mostly, you know, fishing for crappie or bass, and
m'kay.
lots of lakes around here. We're pretty good supply
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, we got quite a few around here.
Yeah,
There's only one natural lake in Texas, though. You know that?
that's true.
All the rest of them are reservoirs or ponds or, like, they've all been built, though.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, yeah, and coffee?
I would love some coffee. Yeah, yeah. So I did. I pastored for about 10 years total. 7 here there in Houston. Had a wonderful pastoral team. Honestly, we uh, great a great group. Really had a heart and vision uh, together. But ended up moving out to thank you the Phoenix area.
Okay.
And pastored a little church there for,
Phoenix.
Scottsdale.
That's where my dad is right now. He's in Cave Creek.
I know exactly where that
It's
is.
where the Bible Museum is
It
currently
is.
set up.
I actually lived in Paradise Valley. Do you know where that is?
I do not. So I haven't been. I need to get out there. They keep saying.
Okay.
"You need to
Have you heard of Camelback Mountain?
No.
Okay. It's sort of a mountain. The valley kind of goes around it a bit. So the Phoenix Valley uh, uh, goes around it. Camelback looks like a camelback,
Hmm.
and we used to climb it every January 1st, just as a New Year's thing.
Okay.
Um, so this church there, I took this church, senior pastor. I went out for a missions meeting. They asked me to speak. They didn't have anybody that Sunday. They were without a pastor. So I spoke, got to meet their elders, and the next thing I know, I'm headed to Phoenix. And the Lord,
Is that like a big move? Like you said, Texas, so mostly Texas.
yeah, I left from Houston too. I was native Houstonian, so
Yeah.
other than a short stint in Waco at Baylor, I'd lived in Houston all my life. So
You weren't one of those never left the state people, though.
no, it wasn't that. It was just opportunity.
Yeah.
And didn't come up.
So
But
do you enjoy Phoenix?
I love Phoenix. I really did. I didn't think I would, but we acclimated to it pretty fast. It's a real outdoor culture.
Mm.
Everything's done outdoors. Even you get used to the heat a little bit, but they've got shade, they've got misters, they've got every.
It's a dry heat. Right? It's a dry heat.
Yeah, until late August when it's 120 plus, and then it doesn't matter.
It's an oven.
It doesn't matter that it's
Yeah.
dry or not.
Yeah,
When
it's
when it's like when the asphalt is melting under your feet, and
Yeah.
it's hot.
So it's run to the car.
Yeah, well, and the car leaves tracks when it pull out of the parking lot. So,
Yeah,
but we did love it. I mean, honestly, it wasn't that bad. You would be in the shade after a Sunday service. I'm at long sleeves.
Mhm.
It's 105, and I'm standing in the shade. I'm not sweating.
That's nice.
That-
As opposed to East Texas, where
Yeah.
it's 95 degrees and your
Humidity
shirt,
95.
yeah, and you're like, why is it so hot out here? So you were a head pastor there.
I was took over a church that I had been birthed actually out of the Jesus movement. So it was since about
So when you say the Jesus movement, that's like the same thing they made the movie off of a
correct
couple
the
years ago.
Jesus Revolution.
Yeah.
It's the same story, and that began late 60s.
Mhm.
Actually, it's interesting. This church began with an Episcopal priest who was kind of kicked out of the the church he was pastoring, one of the pastors.
Is it a renegade.
Kind of a renegade. He was a great guy. He had began to bring people in off the street. He would meeting. They had encounters with. That was also when the charismatic renewal was hitting a lot of mainstream churches,
Mhm.
and so they were not comfortable with it. So he had a group meeting in his home, um, and they just since they were meeting, I think there were probably 20 people, and decided to become a church. Well, one of the guys that was attending was a relative of the J.W. Marriott family, and they had a dude ranch in Paradise Valley that they were going to sell, and so they decided to sell it to the church at a very reduced price.
Mm.
Uh, uh, and they had about 14 apartments. They had uh, 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 food, cafeteria. It's kind of fun. And then they built a sanctuary right in the middle of it. So um, uh, that church became kind of a watering hole, if you will, for the Phoenix Valley, for people who are hungry for more of
Mhm.
Holy Spirit, of what was happening in the Jesus movement. And so they were kind of in their heyday during that time. There was about 3 churches like that in Phoenix. And so it was very impactful for a number of years. And he was a real father to a number of young adults coming out of
Mhm.
the culture, the hippie culture, if you will, into a relationship with Jesus. So very effective during that time. By the time I got there, the churches, most of those folk had been, it was older. They uh, uh, still kind of living in the glory days of the past, and so there was some difficult transition, attempting to kind of
Mhm.
move into a more uh, current or relevant
Like, how so?
ministry
Do you wanna
place.
touch on that or no? I mean,
Uh, yeah, a little bit. It was interesting. This was a 6-acre property. It was like a compound, and
mhm.
so
I mean, if it was a dude ranch, it sounds like it was
yeah. So
probably a
if
nice campus.
it was a nice campus. It was older, but it looked like scrub brush from the front. You could see
Mm,
the sign, but you couldn't see the buildings. And it was kind of interesting. It was kind of back on the property. And so people really, if you didn't know anything about the church, you didn't know what to think of it. And so
'kay.
I went to the neighbors and started just introducing myself. And they said, "Oh, we've had nothing to do." Is that a church back there? So we thought it was a
A cult?
cult.
Oh, that's what I was gonna Yeah,
So we had a little bit to overcome. Uh,
need some rebranding.
some rebranding.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. We started doing some servant evangelism things. I met with started doing rides with the police force, Scottsdale,
okay.
uh, getting to know them and just kind of branching out. What I discovered is it's a small town, but has a very high alcoholism rate.
Really?
It
It's
does.
also very wealthy, right?
Very wealthy,
Yeah.
absolutely. So if
Huh.
you can buy hard liquor, if you will, or you can buy whiskey at any grocery store, any drive-in, you can get it anywhere. Uh,
Arizona, like,
eh,
yeah, like, you can buy whiskey at Walmart,
right.
like Nebraska.
Yeah,
Yeah, like Texas, you can't. You can buy beer and wine at Walmart, and that's it. Most
that's right.
states are like that, but there's some states that like to go a little harder
Yeah.
at
So
Walmart.
it was easy there, and so it had a very high alcoholism rate, and I
Do you
had
think that's linked? Is that linked at all to the economic prosperity or the wealth, or is it like a poor class in the area that has the
no, it was
alcoholism?
a lot of wealth, honestly. I'm uh, one of the one of the people in my church when I got there. The week I got there, I went to visit her in the hospital, and she had passed out in the backyard.
Mm.
Uh, had too much to drink. She had she had passed out and gotten second-degree burns on her legs
Ooh,
from laying out in the sun. Uh, she was introduced to alcohol at wealthy parties, and it became a
mm,
lifestyle. Um, and I think it does come and so those are the people I met. I'm sure that there are a lot of who are, on the other side of the
sure.
other end of the spectrum,
Yeah.
but those are the ones that I met that were very it was an issue. It was a real issue.
So those are something you regularly dealt with at the church.
Individually, but not pervasively,
Hmm.
uh, uh, the, uh, there were a couple of things that came up that, uh, they'd had some, uh,
If you don't want to say, we don't have to say.
I
Yeah,
just, there was some sinful activity that had been buried.
sure.
And one of the young men who had been in jail was getting released from jail after serving some time for sexual abuse with a daughter.
Mm,
And he was under probation. He couldn't be around kids, but the former leader in the church wanted him to come back to church. Well, he was under probation. Probation officer wouldn't let that
uh-huh.
happen. And
Was it
when I
because there were children at the church, or because it was outside of his like
no, it was
area he could
because
travel?
he can be around kids.
Okay.
And the so they were asking me to bring him back in, and his probation officer wouldn't allow it,
Hmm.
and it became a tug of war a bit. Uh,
Why was the church wanting him back?
it was only a
So
few people.
it's few,
It's
okay.
just a few that just
Was he like a standing member, like a good standing? I mean, good standing, but like a member of the church.
He had grown up
Who?
there.
Okay, so
He
he
had grown up
was
there. So I immediately,
deep
this
ties.
was 2 weeks after after coming, and I had a
Oh, so
fight.
you're fresh.
I was fresh, and I was a green. I didn't know anything, uh, and I had a fight on my hands, within 2 weeks of showing
Mm,
up. So it was a tough assignment. Uh, it was kind of a battle most
mm.
of the time. Uh,
What are your thoughts? I mean, I guess to dig into that more, when you do have, say, sin in church members, like what do you believe the congregation is to do when you're dealing with those things?
well, you know, it's
Like speaking hypothetically, in general,
yeah.
not
I'm thinking of the
specifically.
guy that we were dealing with. There is a place of supporting and loving them. Of course, this guy had gone to jail. He'd come out. He's on probation. Uh,
Repentant.
he- no, that
Oh,
was the issue.
well, that's an issue.
That was the issue, and unfortunately, those that had seen the trial, had been through it, knew that.
Mm,
And I was, I met with him, and basically he said, "Well, if something like if my wife had been the kind of wife she should have been, I'd have never done that."
that's not a great answer.
It's not a great answer, and so the lack of repentance was there. Uh, Supporting a person like that, you can, where there's been a deep or genuine change of heart and
Hmm.
repentance. You're embracing it. We need to go all in. So I invited him to go to men's Bible study. There was a small group he was involved in. He could go to. There were no kids there,
Hmm.
and that we did what we could there. But the secret was, if he had had a different attitude, I think bringing somebody in a restorative way that has a mentor, somebody who's walking with them
Hmm.
through even not only the repercussions of their actions, but why they came there in the first place, and begin to walk with them through what's the Lord saying to you about
Hmm.
this? Why is it there? Why were you susceptible to it? So there are that's where I wanted to go, but he wasn't there, and so
Okay.
you know I would have loved to have seen him, walk into some healing,
Hmm.
but um, first step, you got to admit there's
Yeah, you have to repent.
have to
Yeah.
start there. Um,
Hmm.
it's difficult. We're seeing so much, revelation. You're looking for hearts of authenticity and humility, and you're
Hmm.
looking for people who seem to be reacting out of a character of Christ, not self-preservation,
Yeah.
and all of that. And you're seeing a lot of that happening, playing out right in front of us.
Hmm.
Uh,
Now you mean like positively or negatively right now? Are you talking?
Negatively right now.
Okay.
Negatively right now. Um, and I say that positively too. There are
Hmm.
people reacting to when the it's like somebody told me, when you squeeze a lemon, what do you get? Well, you get what's inside,
Mm.
and so their lives are being squeezed a bit. There's public pressure. There's
Mm.
things, and what's coming out
So are you talking more like culturally, like broadly in America right now?
broadly, and to speak the Christian leadership in general. Uh,
Okay.
I I what comes out of a person when we're
When they're under pressure.
when we're yeah, when things aren't going well, where disappointment, where there's
Hmm.
uh uh it reveals what's already there.
Hmm.
Doesn't make you that way. Larry Crabb wrote a book years ago, really helped me, because when I left that little church in Phoenix, uh, it was pretty traumatic, and I lost my family. It was
Mm.
tough for me, um, and frankly, I was pretty mad at God for a while. I went back into the business world. I had
Okay.
you know,
How long were you pastor there?
3 years.
Okay.
Uh, I realized I think the name of the book is Shattered. It was a wonderful book.
What was the author again?
Larry Crabb.
Larry Crabb.
He's probably more famous for a book he wrote called Inside Out.
Okay.
But anyway, the essential message that really hit me was uh, crisis doesn't create the cracks in our foundation. it reveals cracks that are already there. And you begin to understand that when pressure hits, those cracks that are already there, those places of weakness are going to get exposed.
Mm.
And that's what happened. That's what happened in the church. What happened actually with me and my family. So I had lived with what I calling now a vending machine theology.
Okay.
And so I put in my spiritual coins. I did my Bible reading.
Okay.
Raised my kids right. I you know, I did all the things.
You mean like in a works-based pattern,
No, well, just in general, just
or you mean vending a machine, like I go to God with my coins and I
well,
get
I was
good
doing my
stuff
spiritual
back?
push-ups. I was doing putting in my spiritual coins. I was praying. I was teaching my
Okay.
kids the Bible. I was, doing all the things that build for a solid uh, life. And when it didn't work out that way, when
Mm.
that venture turned out, it had some pretty, you know, traumatic events
Mhm.
or results. Uh,
Where did that theology come from?
I don't know. I think I grew up Baptist. I don't. I'm not going to blame them, but I'm a performance kind of perfectionist guy anyway, so I probably
Mhm.
took it on. But that's that's part of the reason I struggled to try to come to terms with what had happened, uh, because uh, God hadn't come through,
Mhm.
and air quotes. the so
Yeah.
when that happened, I became disappointed, disillusioned, and uh, had to work through. Lord, why weren't you there? Why didn't you come through? I did all,
Mm.
invested in my kids. Trouble's not supposed to happen, uh, and I didn't realize I had that kind of thinking until the bottom fell out,
Mm.
and just began to question that kind of stuff, and began to. Uh, I just began to realize that I had an expectation of life that I would be protected from that kind of thing because I had done all these spiritual push-ups. The truth is we live in a broken world.
Mhm.
We live in a place where we all have cracks. And even the people that were doing the negative things toward me and my family, uh, they did.
Mhm.
And so there are choices being made. And uh, the the what I was confronted with was would I trust him in it? Did my adversity cause me to alienate my heart from the Lord, or
Mm.
could I run to him? Could I choose to live in a world that where there's no guarantee of everything happening right,
Mhm.
of not ever having trouble?
Yeah, which the Bible doesn't say anywhere.
Doesn't say that at all.
No.
We just read it into it, I
Yeah, the
think.
prosperity
Oh
gospel.
goodness.
Yeah.
So that's unfortunately we don't give people. I didn't have at least a uh, I hate to call it balanced understanding, but a real understanding that I do live in a broken world and I'm not immune to the effects of it.
Mhm.
But I can trust God in it. He didn't cause it. He didn't cause the evil that happened to us, the things that were difficult. Um, uh, and it revealed my own heart is what it did. That I was trusting. I was kind of formulaic. I was putting my spiritual coins in the vending machine,
Mhm.
expecting and not having a real relationship that
Mhm.
said, whatever happens, I'm trusting you. You're good.
Mhm.
You're always good. So
So why do you think God allows the bad to happen? I mean, I know that's like a cliche question, but
I don't see God as I don't I don't come from a perspective that God either first obviously he doesn't cause evil to happen to us.
Mhm.
How do we get into this topic? That's pretty good.
That's a good
Deep.
topic. Yeah, I know.
It's a good
Oh,
topic.
well, it depends how you look at it, because if you go to the Old Testament, you go to Judges, there's a lot of God brought evil in the land by sending
Yeah.
the Canaanites or the Ammonites or the Moabites or whomever
Yeah.
to punish Israel while they were in their wayward ways to bring them back, which they didn't learn their lessons very well.
Very well.
But
Yeah. I think there's a lot more mystery than
it's a
we'd love to figure this out.
yeah.
There's a lot more mystery to it.
But the word evil is an interesting word because, like, if in the Old Testament, it doesn't really have a moral
Yes.
perspective to it. Like wickedness, iniquity, or those are moral
Yes. Those are
things.
more.
Evil is not. It's just kind of bad things happening. Not that I'm saying that I think God like actively punishes. I don't think God actively punishes people,
Mhm.
but like we get hurricanes, we get natural disasters happen, people get sick, all sorts of stuff just happens. And like, so the standpoint from say a lot of atheists who would say like, why do you believe in God? I can't believe in a God who would allow bad things to happen.
Right.
What would you say to those people? It's kind of where I'm aiming at.
Yeah.
But I also like the topic of evil too.
Yeah. Yeah, I can tell. I say we live in a world that is broken because of sin.
Hmm.
Uh, God did give us the ability to choose. I believe that. Uh, there there are consequences to sin, even sin that we didn't cause. We live in a
Hmm.
world that I didn't bring sin into the world. I grew up in it, but I didn't bring it. So the idea that um, we're sort of guaranteed a protection from the impact of evil is, I'm taking your definition,
Mm.
that bad things happen. Uh, I th- I think that is something we tell ourselves. I'm not sure it's taught. I don't think. I think we live in a broken world, and as long as I live in this broken world, I will live in the effects of it,
Hmm.
or be impacted by it. Uh, I don't think that God allows evil so that to teach us a lesson.
Hmm.
That's as evil as anything.
Okay.
I can't attribute that to God. Um, uh, eh, I think the Lord's heart. Go back to the Phoenix example. I think the Lord's heart was, for me to grow in leadership, but for them, they had an opportunity to change the culture and move in a direction of touching,
Hmm.
of really impacting a neighborhood, which and the people, which is where we were trying to go. It was a choice that was made.
Hmm.
Uh, so uh, I had to come to that realization that God was giving an opportunity for growth for both of us, the church and me. And uh, I can't say that we failed. I can say there's just a lot of brokenness that happened.
Mm.
I learned a lot. I learned a lot.
Well, that's the other thing too is growth.
There is
Like you
growth
can't
happening.
discount. I mean, most growth comes from failure.
Most of it does. And honestly, I came away with, God, you can redeem almost anything,
Mm.
and probably anything. I say almost because I'm still waiting on other redemptive things, but and He will.
Mm.
Uh,
So how did you come back around? Like, so you left the church, went back to finance.
I did go back to finance accounting. Uh, again, I was still a little bit mad at God, trying to process through what all
Hmm.
happened. It was really funny. I wasn't praying much, wasn't doing much devotional life, but I had 10 books on church growth sitting beside my my
Mm.
deals. And so it's
Were
like
you reading them or were they just
split.
sitting
No,
there?
I was reading. I have split personality.
Mm.
Uh,
You were wrestling.
I was wrestling. It took me a while. Took me a while. Um, so I was back in the business world, uh, not really doing any ministry leadership uh, at all. The I had my kids. Their mother had left, so I had 3 kids to raise and
Mm.
finish raising, and create a start from scratch on another career and that
Mm.
kind of thing. So I was pretty, busy with that. Uh, and a few years went by, and I had a friend ask me if I would be interested in meeting someone. She thought we might get along, and so she ended up introducing me to my wife Joyce uh, on a blind date at church,
Mm.
which is really weird because I hadn't been really attending church.
Uh-huh.
So I took my 14-year-old, my youngest, with me
On
eh,
the date.
on the date. Well, we're going to church. So I
Gotcha.
just met her there. Um, uh, and it's really kind of a funny story. We met. I had my son. I felt a little awkward, so we talked just a little bit before service. Service happened, and during the service, I feel like the Lord had given me a prophetic word for this pastor, and my initial reaction was, "No, really?" It's like
Mm.
uh, I wasn't the most cooperative uh, uh, guy at the time.
So do you mean just more like you didn't want to or felt embarrassing or
I was
like
just not cooperating
like
with
I'm
God a
just
whole
not
lot.
gonna I'm not gonna do that.
No, I wasn't rebellious. It was like, Lord, what are you asking me to do something for? And
Mm.
you know, especially where I'm at. So I went ahead and gave it to him after the service and shared it with him. And when I left, saw Joyce sitting on the floor. She was praying over a couple of ladies, uh, and when I walked by, the Lord spoke to me, and she said, "She's the real deal." And I knew that I didn't have to fear that.
Mm.
She was the real deal. So we got to know each other very quickly, and ended up a year and a half getting married. A year and a half later, getting married, and uh, we kind of worked our way back to seeing how God had put us together in a way that we were more partners than anything in terms of ministry and the
Mhm.
outlook. We had tons of friends in common that we never knew each other, but we had all these friends in common
Mm.
who kind of vouched for the other kind of
So
thing.
it's
They're good.
they're
He's
an
a good
okay they're
guy.
an
He's
okay
okay
person?
guy,
Yeah. Yeah.
But and so we got involved in a marriage ministry and began to see how marriages can be strengthened. Not only strengthened, but marriages are struggling and on the brink of divorce can be pulled back and made something very healthy. And so we learned a whole lot. Began to get involved in ministry together
Mm.
and all. So I was still working doing CFO controller type stuff and went to work for eventually went to work for Christian Brothers Automotive, which is a automotive franchise, and found a group of real like-minded believers who uh, good at business, good at doing life together, good at
Mhm.
enjoying what the Lord was doing. And so I retired from there after about 10 years. And now I'm in a phase of kind of what's next. So,
Okay.
Lord, what are you doing next?
Mm.
So uh, long and short of it is I'm still trying to figure out what's next.
Mm.
you know,
Do you have any leadings? Any ideas what's next?
well, we've gotten involved in our church a little bit, and all.
Say a little more than a little bit.
Well, a little bit. Uh, we've I've enjoyed more the coaching, mentoring at the place of life I'm in.
Mhm.
Um, uh, it's really thrilling to see people flourish, and so helping that develop is fun.
Mhm.
It's fun. Joyce is very, very active and is much more better at a number of things. But uh, we're seeing fruit in it, and there's
Mhm.
good connections made. We feel like we've got good family, so
Mhm.
that's good. But I still feel like there's more to come, and so we'll see.
What do you think your, theological focus would be? Because it seems like different people have different focuses or, I guess, assignments, to put it the way you put it, of, like, what their focus is on with God, like, what they, I guess, are trying to bring into the world or what they're trying to teach to the world.
Hmm.
Um, I guess the question is, like, where do you lean theologically as far and theologically is the wrong word. Um, I guess your ministry. What would be your ministry?
Uh, I get a lot of life from this is kind of the way I'm built. I get a lot of life from relationally, uh, one-on-one discipleship type stuff, heart connections that are pursuing the Lord, uh, growing in Him. I have a real heart for revival to see uh, a move of God, and I love the teaching into that,
Mhm.
praying into that. Uh, I think it. Uh, I used to go do a lot of trips. We'd go to mission trips, and my most fun thing to do was I'd go and help pastor love on missionaries, who are in the front lines all the time.
Mm.
And so I
So
still
people who are always focusing on other people
exactly.
who probably need a little focus themselves.
They need a little focus themselves, and I need a little focus myself. So I do enjoy that a lot. So uh, I'm serving back on a mission board that I get to do that. I've just made some friendships with some folk that I'm hopefully going to get to do that as well and learn, because these folk are doing works that they're touching the world.
Mm.
They're seeing tons of people come to Christ, and uh, communities being changed.
Mm.
So I'm excited to learn about that and connect with them. But the uh, I don't know if I told you this before today. Uh, I was in. We'd found the church that we're in. I just saw the sign. Stopped in. I love the in Knack as it is in heaven. It just
Mm.
drew me in. Second service, we were there. Had a uh, worship was real good, and during that, uh, I kind of got quiet, and I just began to ask the Lord, "What's next?" It was about a month away or 2 months away before I was to retire, and so I was asking the Lord, "What's next?" And the uh, uh, the only thing I heard, I felt like the Lord said, "Friendship," and that was a strange thing, but I immediately knew it meant not only friendship, a human friends,
Mhm.
but friendship with Him. Uh, there's a place of where I think the Lord wants us to come to, where we're partnering with Him as friends, not just no longer calling us slaves, but kind of growing into a partnership where we do this together.
Mm.
And I think that's the Lord's heart, what He wants. And so I knew that. That's what I immediately knew. I felt like that's what He wanted. But it really caused me to get quiet inside. And I said, "Well, then, Lord, what do you want me to do?" And just as clearly as I'd heard the other, uh, the Lord said, uh, "Anything you want to do." Now that was a weird answer,
Mm.
but I also knew it didn't mean just go r- run do wall stuff that I wanted to do. What
Yeah.
what it meant was,
Take up skydiving.
we're friends. What comes to your heart, go for it,
Mhm.
because I trust you with your heart. Your heart wants what I want. We want the same things. It was a very, for me, it was a little bit of it was freeing, but it was also a little bit of, I need to steward this well,
Mm.
you know, walking, a little bit of fear of the Lord that came with it, honestly, because I'm going to steward that.
Yeah, freedom. Freedom can
It
be
was
scary.
free, yeah. so, uh, so I really don't know. I've, I'm trusting that, uh, I read once and that the next, the most influential decade of your life is your 70s.
Mm.
Very surprising to me.
Now when you say influential, you mean influencing others
Mhm.
or being influenced?
No,
Okay, so
influencing
if you're
others,
influenced young,
having impact,
yeah.
and influencing people. And but may be true because I'm staring 70s in the face right now. Uh, so having coming to where I am now, saying, "Lord, what's next?" It feels like partnering. It feels like freedom. It feels like I'm
Mm.
aligning myself with purposes that are not just retirement, not just playing golf. I love doing that, but
Mhm.
uh,
It's not just your own pleasures.
it's not just that. It's not so self-focused, but I think that's part of the journey. It's not like that's not a guilty pleasure because I have no guilt when I'm. It's just I'm enjoying it, and that's part of God and our
That's important too, though, to be able to actually, like, take that time that you know you need for unwinding or, um,
why
decompressing from the day and
why
just
would the Lord
enjoying
want that
it.
for us? I mean, he's a good father. He
Yeah.
wants and so I have no guilt at all. Not much time, but
Mm.
uh,
Hey, other people, I mean, lots of people find time for golf. Trump times finds time for golf, so
we'll find it. We'll
yeah.
find it.
Yeah.
That's just it's the stage of kind of partnering that I don't feel pressured to make. I don't feel pressure. It's a desire.
Mm.
It's the Lord. I want these next few years to be impactful.
Hmm.
I want them to be uh, influential with regard to the kingdom.
Mhm.
You know, um,
So you're doing a lot of work with men's ministry right now.
I am right now.
Yeah.
Love it.
What are you, I guess, what are your goals there? What you're, because you've been doing a lot with the structure there and the men's meetings and,
They, I really, I think we've lost a real authentic, you know, balanced view. I'm stopping short of saying biblical view of manhood, uh, because it's so used. But I don't know that we know what it means to be men of God and learning to lead our homes well, love our family well, lead in our communities. Uh, and so if we can get men who are able to kind of steward their homes in a sense that they're giving the leadership and
mhm,
the love, uh, uh, I'd love to see that. It's unfortunately become countercultural for men to be those kind of leaders,
mhm.
uh, to a big degree.
What do you think caused that?
Well, I don't know. It seems to have changed since uh, probably my generation allowed the change. The feminism movement came up.
Mm.
We kind of pulled back. I think it's men's fault. We've not learned.
Which wave? Because I think that's your generation would be second wave feminism, I believe.
Yeah, when I would have been early
I
20s.
think you might correct me on that one, but first wave I think was the suffrage movement. And then
Yeah,
second wave was in the 60s, 70s.
which was
Third
all.
wave was 90s. And
Uh,
now I think we're fourth wave.
I think we're in a fourth wave now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think we pulled back from uh, leading. Um, we've lost what real leadership is.
Mhm.
You know.
Well, it seems like it's definitely pushed in the culture. Well, something my wife always complains about is when you see commercials on TV and you have the smart wife, and the dumb husband
Yeah.
who can't keep it together. Then you have the kid who's smarter than both of them or whatever. But the moms are always more competent than the dad. The
Oh
dads
yeah.
are incompetent, and I feel like our culture is kind of infused with that idea of men taking a back seat
Hmm.
in life and in their families and in leadership.
Yeah. I think that's true. It certainly is true in where the business world. If you're out front leading, you come home and it's just over. Your
Mm,
leadership stops. Uh, I'm not. I think there's is a resurgence. I think it would be the healthiest thing for us. It would be to recapture what does it look like to be walk healthily as men, as leading and loving our families well.
so in practical terms, what does that mean to you?
Well,
Like specifics.
well, it's not like I'm not as good as at nurture, right?
Okay.
Women are better at nurturing, so
Mhm.
doing, meeting the needs of the kids, those kind of things.
There's a reason that
Typically,
kids need mothers when they're young.
when
Under
they
7,
yeah,
they really need their
but
moms.
am I praying for my family in a way that I'm standing for them,
Mm,
praying over them, walking in authority, spiritual authority over them? Uh, uh, we don't do that. We don't have a lot of men stepping into
mhm,
that role, to being that. I think I think men were made to be providers and protectors, and when we're not doing that, there is a sense of almost a sense of failure or identity crisis to some degree.
Hmm.
Not that men have to make the most money in the home. That's not it. It's an issue of is my family doing well? Are they
Mhm. What's
providing?
your responsibility as a man to make sure? I mean, the Bible says that if you don't provide food, raiment, and shelter, you're worse than an infidel, but it does go a lot further than that in
Yeah,
providing
it's not
nurturing
just
and
the physical
that's like
provision.
the bare minimums that a man is meant to provide.
Yeah. Yeah, I think creating an environment, a safe environment for my family to be who they are, to grow up in,
Mhm.
to make sure that there's an atmosphere where we're honoring the Lord,
Mm.
you
But
know?
also not a sheltered environment because they are gonna have to get
Oh,
exposed to the world.
oh goodness, no. Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm very familiar with helicopter parents that go too far
Mhm.
in that
Well, now we have snowplow parents where they just remove all the obstacles from your path.
no path has an obstacle in it, and
Yeah.
it's terrible. I mean, I think my immunities were built up more from drinking from the water hose
Exactly, yes.
than the shots I was
Yes, one of
getting.
the best things you can do for your health is eat some dirt.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
but they're
especially as a kid.
creating that place where flourishing can happen, and I'm talking about spiritually, physically,
Mhm,
emotionally, uh, and I think that's on us to lead,
mhm,
at least create the environment.
yeah.
Uh, uh, Moms do provide the nurture more, but
But dads provide the authority structure.
the structure and
Mhm,
the safe place.
mhm. I
You
mean,
know.
there's a reason that, statistically, children that are born in dual parent households have a lower incarceration rate than single
Yeah.
mother homes,
Hmm.
but single father homes have the same incarceration rate as the dual parent household. Which so the single father homes, they may not feel a lot of nurture or love because men aren't the best at providing that, but they still learn respect for authority and structure in society.
Right.
So that comes from your fathers, and that's like as fathers, that's our obligation to provide that
It
to our
is. It
children.
is. And the interesting thing is that I really think that that kind of manhood is can only be bestowed by men.
Hmm.
In other words, it's single moms have such a huge responsibility, but they're not men,
Hmm.
and they do great jobs. I mean,
Yeah,
Joyce raised her boys by herself for 20 years.
yeah. It's not disparaging the single mother.
Not at
It's
all.
it's just like there's different components. Men provide something, mothers provide something different than fathers provide,
Yeah.
and neither of us can adequately do the other's job.
And that I think we've missed out. So many men have missed out on a good image of what a good father is.
Hmm.
What do they do? And um, and obviously it it affects how we relate to God, but also how we relate to our current family of not feeling of that inadequate.
Hmm.
Just so hard for men to deal with, you know, the feeling of inadequacy for the very thing I'm supposed to be doing well.
Hmm.
You know,
And men don't tend to perform well when they're not accomplishing or they don't feel like, for lack of a better term, a real man.
yeah, if they don't have the confidence in it,
Hmm.
in what they're doing, I don't. I usually don't.
Well, it's really easy as a man to attribute your value to your accomplishments or what you're providing,
Yeah,
which I know that our internal value is not supposed to be
yeah. Unfortunately,
on that, but there is still I think there's still a reason why most men feel that way. Like if you're providing nothing of value to anyone, you don't tend to feel good as a man.
right.
And I do think
But
there's a reason for that.
but there is a place where, like, I kind of know how to change the oil in my car,
Hmm.
but I won't start a repair because I don't know what I'm doing,
Yeah, but you can. I mean, that's why you specialized
and I
in what
pull
you
back.
did.
I pull back from things I know I'm not good at,
Hmm.
and I'm not. So if men know they're not good at family, know they're not good at we tend to
Mm.
pull back a little bit. That's what I'm saying.
But that's an area where like we're kind of obligated or responsible to step up and learn that thing.
Well, we need to learn. We need
Yeah.
to learn. But uh, so we're focusing right now on just on the men learning to walk in spiritual authority. What
Mhm.
does it mean?
Mm.
You know, and uh,
What do you think the importance of prayer is? Let's go going from the perspective of someone who doesn't really believe in prayer or doesn't pray much, either Christians or non-believers.
well, I see prayer more as a partnership, not just asking that my needs be met or something I want, I get. Uh, Prayer is really giving myself to what the Lord's wanting,
Mhm.
and uh, the model prayer we use is a great way to start because I'm recognizing God's purposes for me is that the kingdom of heaven would influence the earth here. Lord, what are you wanting for the earth here?
Mhm.
What are you wanting for my family? And I began to agree with him in prayer. Prayer is more partnership than it is asking of things. I think that's all I think we are to ask. We're encouraged to ask. Prayer is about that.
Mhm.
But that's only a part. It is relational. Should have some give and take to it,
Mhm.
where I'm listening and I'm asking and I'm speaking those things that the Lord wants into the situation.
Mhm.
So it's not one thing,
Yeah.
but I'm the first to say it can become ritual. It can become routine real quick.
Okay.
And uh, there's that guarding against that.
Just recite your lines and then move on.
Move on. Yeah, you did your thing. But uh, I I think that's one of the reasons we need people in our lives that help keep that fresh. What's the Lord saying?
Mhm.
What are you praying about these days? What's on your heart? Uh, when I've when I have, especially men, when I'm praying with men, there is it's like playing a team sport. The focus becomes easier for all of us to get into,
Mhm.
uh, and so we do it together. And it reminds me, I hear somebody praying. I said, "Oh, I haven't prayed like that in a while."
Mhm.
It stirs me.
Well, it's good to see examples and also community, like knowing that you're coming together as a group rather than just an individual
Oh yeah,
isolated doing this thing.
yeah, no, absolutely. So uh, we have 3 times of prayer for guys at the church because I think we've lost men. If you look at just the whole role of prayer and intercession, 80% of the people that pray are women.
Mm.
Men don't feel accomplished, don't feel again, it's one of those things that we don't feel good at it. And
Mm.
uh, but I think the more we learn to engage with the Lord in prayer as a foundation for how we do life and do life together as men, uh, it goes better for our families. We are better in our families. Uh,
Mhm.
and
Well, when you're those things are on your mind, when you're praying about your family, you're thinking about your
oh yeah,
family.
what are their needs? How can I give myself to them? What's my wife needing? You know,
Mhm.
um, it forces me to come into a place where uh, am I choosing what to love them by getting out of myself and saying, what do they need? I'm
Mhm.
giving myself to meeting those basic needs. It it goes well for them.
Mhm.
You know, uh, Joyce and I have a tool we use of learning to meet for a husband and wife to learn to meet each other's basic emotional needs, and so we'll help them identify that need for acceptance, need for support,
Mhm.
whatever that is, and we redefine love as meeting my mate's most important emotional needs. And so when I become focused on her needs, and that's my goal, and I'm not keeping score about whether my needs are being met,
Mhm.
but she's doing the same thing. We are learning to live selflessly with each other and
Mhm.
meeting each other's needs. And it works.
Mhm.
The whole thing of selfless love works.
Yeah.
So I think learning to do that in our families is um, is key. And we do that through prayer and support.
Mm. How has the attendance been with the men's prayers?
Pretty good. I mean, it comes and
I have
goes.
not been to the Thursday, afternoon or noon
I think
prayer.
usually it can be one or two, or it can be 6 or 8.
Mhm.
So it just kind of depends on the season. But
What's your structure? Because I know, like, Garth has his own structure and Terrell has his own structure.
it's probably similar to Terra. We'll take a passage, we'll or some passages, and we'll kind of pray through them. I like coming with an idea of what's in front of us. Like we'll come with a particular psalm. We'll pray through it. What's on your heart? What's God stirring?
Mhm.
Uh, we will close typically with praying for some personal needs. Uh, it's good for disclosure. It's good for us to feel supported, and so we'll usually kind of close with that. Uh, uh, we're just learning to share life together a little bit, and some of it is just how you doing, what's
Mhm.
going on.
Yeah.
But then we'll turn it to a passage or some psalms that we're praying, and learn to pray the scriptures is a great way to learn, and
Mhm.
and it keeps us focused on. But we'll always come back to you know anything personal we can pray for.
Yeah.
You know, uh, and we're learning to do it. We're learning to do it as a group.
Mhm.
You know, but it's probably pretty similar to the format.
Yeah.
Garth may be a little bit different in the
Garth is like I do enjoy Garth. His is, somewhat like a, almost like a men's therapy program.
yeah.
I don't know if you've been,
No, I haven't been. We've talked a lot about it,
yeah.
and I've seen so many folks just love it, you
Yeah.
know, of interacting with the Lord.
Mhm.
What's what can I be thankful for? What are they?
But there's definitely a lot of like I mean, these words safety or like ease of like just talking about whatever's on your mind in his group, and there's safety. I
Yes.
mean, it feels like kind of like, oh, we need safety. It's kind of a weak word, but I do think men need places where they can just be open and honest and not be concerned, you know, that they're going to get attacked for it or.
It does have to be a safe place, honestly. And even if those who don't feel like they can pray very well, for instance,
Mhm.
it's okay. This
Yeah,
world,
you can be quiet the whole time.
we be quiet. You
Yeah.
don't have to. But the men actually need the kind of safe environment
Mhm.
uh, that uh, we can provide each other. It's a real gift. It's a real gift to have a group of people with whom I'm not performing.
Mhm. Very
y-
much so.
and it's a beautiful place. And so all of us, our hearts seek it. So
Mhm.
I hope to create that kind of environment.
Yeah.
You know,
So yeah, you said you're in next stage of life, but not quite not you're seeing where God's leading you next. But do you have any current things that you've been studying on or
I don't
stuff to
studying
plug?
nothing to
What do you want to
plus.
plug?
We're doing the men's nights on monthly, and I really I think they're I think I'm excited about them. I think the Lord's going to use them
Mhm.
uh, because we're sharing some things, trying to drill down into the weeds, into getting a little deeper into how do we walk this thing out and spiritual. What is spiritual authority? How do we walk
Mhm.
it out? What does it mean?
Yeah.
What does it look like? Let's put some clothes on it and know what it looks like for us to walk in spiritual authority in our homes, in our families, with our kids. When our kids are coming home are having nightmares,
Mm.
you know.
We're suffering from that a little bit right now.
It is. And
Our
what can we do? You feel
uh,
helpless a bit. And so we're learn to come in and pray over our kids. I mean, they don't have to be awake. They can do it when they're sleeping, uh, and begin to pray against those and uh, the kind of prayers where we're not allowing that kind of stuff to come in.
Mhm.
So, uh, digging into what does it mean to really walk with the Lord this way?
Mhm.
You know,
Well, and I always like to know practically what things are. I mean, or how you perform something. I mean, one question I always ask when anyone's throwing a new theology or an idea at me is like, how does this make me a better Christian?
yeah,
Like, so they'll be often some like really deep, like maybe true, maybe not true, like God thing about the nature of God.
yeah.
And I'm like, and then I have to listen and believe this thing they're saying to me. But it's like, okay, how does this make me
What
a
do I
better
do with this?
Christian? What do I do with this
Yeah.
information?
I started writing some years ago. I probably should redo it. On the top of my pages with my notes is what do I want them to know, and what do I want them to do about it?
Mm,
And if I can keep that in mind,
yeah.
you know, what are we going to do with this?
Yeah. Knowledge without application
How do
isn't
we do
super
this?
useful.
And so for the men's nights, we're trying to not only give information or talk about information, but we'll take it down into some questions where men are sharing, and then hopefully giving them also tools that they can use during the week. And so
Mhm.
we last time gave a prayer tool. Basically, it's a um, that you could use, and so I've challenged them to pray that every day for 30 days. So it's and we'll share what happens. I've already begun to get some testimonies about what
Yeah?
changes are being made. Yeah, it's cool
Excellent.
stuff. Uh, we're gonna do kind of a part two on tearing down imaginations and take
Mm.
you know s- learning the lies we believed and how they rule us, and we don't even
Mhm.
know about it. Uh,
Yeah, that has deep effects.
it does have deep effects, and there, I catch myself,
Mhm.
you know,
No, I'm this way, I'm not this way. Like, I mean, I'm not a people person,
yeah,
yet here I am doing a
it, yeah,
podcast.
exactly, exactly,
Yeah.
and I hate being in a room where
Well, the thing I've realized for me too is, like, I'm not so much not a people person, it's just, like, growing up as a pastor's kid, there was a lot of obligation associated with people.
hmm
So it meant people were work as a child, like, just social interacting, whatever you're doing. And so I kinda grew into a place where, like, I didn't like being around people
hmm
because it means I would then have to do stuff, whatever that may be.
hmm
Even if it's sit and be quiet or sit and talk or participate in prayer, but everything became an obligation.
and so we take in that's a truth, and we start living under it.
Mhm.
Uh, when the truth is, you are very engaging. It's not hard. It comes easy for you.
Mm.
Uh,
I will
the,
say I think I'm a good listener, I
you are good at
think.
listening. The point is this: we can be governed, if you will. It's like the gears in like a standard stick shift.
Mm.
I can press the accelerator as hard as I can, but if I'm in first gear, I will only go so fast.
Yeah.
I got to get into another gear. Well, these these things we believe about ourselves, I call them lies we believe, govern how we live. You can see it
Mhm.
and practically working out. Um, uh, example, I've seen all these people pray, and I'm encouraged to pray for healing, for physical healing,
Mhm.
right? And yet I don't see a lot, and so I can take on this, and well, God just said, I'm just not good at that. Or
Mm.
praying for that, I can take that on, and the truth is, everybody who has seen people healed, their batting average isn't a whole lot better than it. I can take that on, and it prevents me as a lion. It prevents me from um, engaging or giving myself permission to really pray and believe the Lord for that He wants to heal somebody.
Mhm.
And so I recognize the lie because it's stopping me from trusting God over it. It's holding me back,
Mhm.
and it's a real subtle thing. And so I'm learning to recognize the lie, to repent of it, and remove its effect. And we're gonna go through all that in the men's thing.
Mm.
But
Something I find interesting about, the concept of, like, the lie you believe is that's actually a tool in story writing for writing fiction with characters.
mhm,
Like, your baselines of characters are, like, what are their wants? What are
right,
their needs? Which are 2 separate things.
mhm,
And then what's the lie that they tell themselves that needs to be changed by the end of the story?
right.
So it's like it's a
It's good.
crucial aspect to writing stories, and, like, but I think the reason it works so well is because it's part of real life.
It is part of
Like,
the life.
most of us do have lies about ourselves that we believe that either our parents told us or someone growing up told us.
Or came through a wound, or
Yeah, a
yeah,
lot of them come through wounds,
most of them do.
and they really hold us back.
They do. And so we learn to recognize it, learn to how do we break its power? So a lie only has power that I give it,
Mhm,
right? So when I agree with that lie, now it has power to rule me.
mhm,
Okay. So if something hits me, it's not a truth, it's a lie, and recognize it and reject it, it has no power over me.
mhm.
But when I'm taking it in, my heart's made agreement with it, uh, it can rule me. And that's where its power is.
Yeah.
And so I where I need help is the Lord revealing what lie have I believed? What am I under?
Mhm,
And I not only uh, repent for taking the lie in and its repercussions, but I also uh, renounce it. I put it under the blood of Jesus.
mhm.
It declare it won't rule me any longer. I break my friendship with it. I break my agreement that I made with it, and that's the power that it had to rule over me. So, and then I received the truth, which is God does heal
Mhm.
in this instance. God does heal. Not everybody gets healed. That's part of the mystery.
Mhm.
It's not a, uh, but I'm going to trust God and give myself to it because He will.
Yeah.
He wants me to. There's trusting Him. And when I did that, I also took it one more step, and I began to rehearse. And I think that this is a biblical discipline of rehearsing the truth. And I began to,
That's what I was gonna ask about, like, what do you believe in mantras?
well, I don't call it mantra.
I mean, like, that's the best definition I can use for it, but this, like, repetition of something in order to, like, drum it in or infuse it into your mindset.
I would say the discipline of remembering, it can take on exactly what you're saying. It can take on, Lord, I remember when you did this and you did this. Uh, when I did that, when I started doing this, it's interesting that when I start, I usually remember things I couldn't remember before, and it's not like a mantra. It's not the same thing every time,
Mhm.
but I will. Lord, I remember when you healed this person when I prayed for them, and I start reorienting myself in the truth. Uh, when I do that, I find that my own heart is uh, inclined or predisposed to trust God over the situation I'm praying for,
Mhm.
instead of approaching it like, "Well, this will never happen," you know.
Yeah. Yeah, most things don't happen when you approach them that
Yeah, you
way.
do. It's not really called faith,
Yeah.
but so it does change, and there is a discipline of giving ourselves to the truth, and that what I'm calling this discipline of remembering. Uh,
Mm.
and I'm engaging my heart in the truth, and that may be a scripture has revealed. It may be testimony of what the Lord's done. Uh, and so that lie is no longer ruling me and even preventing me from doing or praying for something or believing God for something. Uh, happened just recently. There was I kind of right after I started doing that, I went to a service at another church here, and uh, lady came up to me and during a prayer time, and I wasn't even up front. She just came. Somebody said he can pray for you, and so I didn't know who she was, and she said that she'd been in constant pain in her knees. She has no cartilage in her knees, just kind of bone
Mm.
on bone kind of thing. And would I pray for her? Well, Joyce and I were there together. We turned around, prayed for her, and it probably prayed for no more than 60 seconds. It literally asked her to stand up, kind of see how it was and test it. And she looked up and said, "There's no pain."
Mm.
So I said, "Well, walk around. Let's see if there's," and sure enough, the pain was completely gone and all. And
Mm.
uh, which
Well,
is 3 weeks before, I
mhm.
probably would have said, "I'll pray for you," and had no expectation and probably seen no result. So there is a place of preparing my heart, in a place, getting
Yeah.
to a place of I'm not being ruled by uh, lies or inferior logic or
Yeah.
whatever.
Well, I think one of the more, say, accountable stories I've heard about healing was the one that you gave about the baby who had thrush.
Yeah. Yeah.
'Cause you said there were physical blisters that were
Yes.
there before,
Mhm.
and then they were gone.
Yeah. And within 10 seconds. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just that quick.
Well, you wanna go over that story real quick?
Yeah. I was a small group leader, and I was called, one of my small group members of my small group called, just, they were, of, I don't know, the baby was less than a year. It was probably maybe, maybe 4 months old or something. It was pretty young. Uh, the, the baby had gotten thrush. And so and would I come over to their house and pray? And because it was late at night, and uh, they didn't want to go to the urgent care. They just want
Mhm.
us to come pray. So we did. And I called another member.
Well, it wasn't life-threatening.
It was not life threatening. No.
No.
They'd just been, it was miserable. The baby had been crying for hours and just
Mhm.
couldn't get any relief. So I called a friend who was in the small group and asked him to meet me there because I wanted to pray on the way. Oh God, would you show up? The kind of thing. And so we got there, and sure enough, the baby had been crying and so worn out. It was so tired. And I looked at it, and these blisters were all inside its mouth and even coming out and on its lips. And so we just, while the baby was crying, we just started praying and for it. And within literally just a few seconds after praying for them, laying our hands on and praying for this baby, he stopped crying. And we opened its mouth, and the blisters that I'd seen there just a few seconds before were gone,
Hmm.
literally gone. And within just a few minutes, the baby was so exhausted uh, uh, that he fell asleep.
Hmm.
Uh, and I remember leaving, and we were all thrilled. I mean, obviously, this was, we watched something happen. It was so wonderful
Hmm.
to see the Lord do that. Uh, and I left, and I was struck with awe. I was like, God, you really did that. This was real, kind of
Yeah.
and it drew me to Him uh, in a way that you are just so loving to take to heal this little baby, just stop the suffering
Hmm.
was an amazing thing. Um, and it caused me to have a faith. Literally, I grew by watching the Lord do that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I mean, the reason I like that story is because a lot of stories about like I went up and got prayed for chronic pain type of thing, and the chronic pain went away. If you're a skeptic, you could say, well,
yeah,
placebo effect, or you were fake, or whatever. Kind of hard to refute like a physical thing going away. On top of the fact that you're not going to get a placebo effect from a baby.
right, right.
4-month-old's not going to
You're not
give
going
you
to talk
that.
them into that.
No, you're not. So that's why I like that story.
and
It's
and we don't see a lot of that. Uh, uh, I mean, when you pray for somebody's shoulder and the pain is gone, it's their verbal, they're telling you it's
Mhm.
gone, and you hope that's true. Now, I do ask them to do, if I'm praying for somebody and they're saying it's better, I ask them to do something they couldn't do before.
Mhm.
And one lady, the Lord had healed her, the pain was gone in her shoulder. Lord healed it, and she was reaching back and movement, and she couldn't reproduce the pain. And
Mhm.
so we were just trusting that testimony. I didn't see
Yeah, yeah.
but you're just trusting that that happens. Um, but it's interesting to me. It's like a bucket with holes. Faith leaks, and so my
So you gotta
expectation.
keep putting more in there to keep it topped up.
So, and that's part of the disciplines of spending time with Him. And
Well, it's a muscle. Like, if you don't keep going to the gym, the muscle's gonna atrophy.
yeah, and that's part of why uh, I think is as the more we do that, uh, it's not that we're going to walk around full of faith all the time,
Mhm.
but uh, I will approach something with a greater confidence and expectation. Does healing happen every time? No. And again, it's not a formula.
Mhm.
There's a mystery always involved. But I know God wants to heal,
Mhm.
and I'm convinced of that.
Yeah.
And so
Well, the other thing too is like, oh, if you go up expecting healing, or if you're praying and then it doesn't happen, you don't ditch God,
yeah. Well,
because
uh,
some people do,
some
but
do.
like I don't think that's not an appropriate approach.
No, but there is a the more I've approached, Lord, I am leaving these results to you. I'm trusting you. I'm going to pray and be obedient. I'm going to trust you to touch them. Uh, uh, I grow in my expectation, and it's funny. It's like the muscle, I guess, analogy. The more I use it, the more I see results.
Mhm.
The more I come in with an expectation, and I'm not allowing the lies to govern me and even keep me from praying, even
Mm.
keep me from uh, entering something and praying in faith. Uh, and so, what lie was I believing? God won't show up
Mhm.
if I pray and ask for healing. Simple things, you know.
Yeah.
If I seek the Lord, will I find Him?
Yeah.
It's just those kinds of things kind of rule us, and we're not even cognizant of it.
Mhm.
Most of the time, lies are there because we're unaware of them.
Well, you don't. I mean,
They think
how do you know when you're deceived?
that's it. So
You
it
don't.
feels right for that lie to exist. Had a young lady who had who's she and her husband were having some serious problems, and the truth is, she was kind of driving him nuts a bit, you know. And as we talked with her, we realized that the truth she had embraced happened at an early age when when her father left,
Mm.
and then she had a boyfriend who left. And her truth was all men will eventually leave.
Mm.
And what happened is her behavior began to be dictated by that truth, and she began to do things that was sabotaging the relationship.
Yeah. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. So that lie was governing her behavior. And so the Lord showed us her that we began to repent of it, and it had an impact on her behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And because lies do impact our lives.
Yeah. And then, I mean, it's easy to acknowledge something and agree with it in your head, but actually like getting it into where it's part of your outlook and your attitude and part of your heart,
Right.
for lack of a better term, is a
Right.
lot. That's where the exercise happens. That's where
Yes.
you have to work at it. And the continual reminder, like you said, if you're praying and you're continually reminding yourself of things, it will eventually embed itself.
It does. Well,
Hopefully.
it will. I think it was John Eldridge that told a story. I may be attributing something he didn't do. I've told it so many times. I think I did it. But it's like a couple who are getting to an argument over the smallest things. And when he
Mhm.
comes home from work, he's tired, you know, and his wife wants him to do something at the house, do some sort of errand, and she keeps on him about it. So every time he comes in the door, she's asking him to do something. And finally he gets mad at her. You keep, just demanding things, and he storms out of the house and goes to the car just to get some freedom. And while walking out to the car, this thought goes in his head. She's just nagging me all the time. She's just a nag.
Mhm.
And so every time she asks him to do something, what thought goes off in his head?
Mhm.
She's just an egg. Why is it there? He embraced it.
Mhm.
He gave his heart to it. And so that thought goes off in his head every time.
Mhm.
What's going off in her head? If he loved me, he'd take care of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So their relationship is now being governed by lies.
Mhm. And they're not communicating the
Oh,
need
goodness, no.
to each
Because
other.
they're being
Yeah.
driven. So we've got to learn to recognize and renounce the lies,
Mhm.
and that is hard. It takes the revelation, takes the Holy Spirit showing us, where am I being ruled by something?
Mhm.
Where's my, because, uh, like I said, they stay there because they feel right, and I've given them power.
Mhm. And you're familiar with them.
I'm familiar.
Yeah.
And so there is that's why the scriptures call it the enemy he's an accuser, the accuser of the brethren.
Mhm.
And so I take in that accusation
Mm.
and I agree with it. Ooh, you know,
Yeah.
so, uh, we do it with a lot of things. So I'm, uh, walking in spiritual authority is that I'm asking the Lord to show me, where am I living under something not true? Where am
Mhm.
I living under something that's not of you? And learning how to deal with that.
Mm.
Uh, because the Lord wants us walking in freedom, but freedom that is, uh, free to love Him, free to love our family well, free uh, to do the right thing, not the
Mhm.
freedom to do the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So,
You gonna write a book on this?
oh goodness, no, I probably so many. We're gonna try to get it in our own life first,
Yeah.
and in our. Uh, so February we're going to talk about how to love a woman.
How to Love a Woman?
Yep, yeah,
Mm.
it's just a title. We're going to learn how to love our
So
families
you
well.
already know what you're gonna tell them? Or,
Mhm.
okay. Do we get a precursor on that, or a little,
Oh
I don't
goodness,
know.
we
We
have
wanna hop into that or no?
we are far from. Uh, Again, it's sort of going to the men have taken such a back seat,
Mhm.
and women have had to drive the van because we haven't been
No, you mean like the spiritual van or the
spiritual van.
family van or
The spiritually, you know, what does my wife need? What does she need?
Mm.
One thing she needs is safety. She needs to, is our relationship safe?
Mhm.
What do I mean by that? Sounds good. Does my wife know that I'm not flirting with somebody else?
Mhm.
Does my wife know that I'm not sharing details she wouldn't want to be shared of our relationship? Am I safe? Not
Mm.
just safe with her when I'm there, but am I safe over here when I'm not
Mhm.
with her? That's learning to love my wife well. Uh,
Mm.
and so there are things that we take for granted a sense, but we're undermining the very thing we want, which is a loving relationship.
Mhm.
So we're going to kind of get practical into that a little bit.
Yeah.
What does a woman need?
Mm.
Um, uh, anyway, I'm not
Yeah.
going to spoil it too much.
Any recommendations? People who want to explore the, idea more of, like, getting over the lies that you tell yourself. Do you have any recommendations? Books,
Uh,
seminars, anything like that?
I've been impacted by some books by Dan Allender. He's a great counselor. Um, he's got some work on that. Um, you probably find uh, Henry Cloud has some stuff in it. Uh, uh, a lot of inner healing resources are out there. Uh, Navigators has one actually.
Mhm.
Some really good training materials on learning to recognize patterns of thought.
Yeah. And I
That
mean, it's not like, I mean, it's not a novel concept to, like, not take
oh no
away,
no
but it's like I think it's so embedded and so true, like, so many people talked about it. It's to the point where, like I said, it's even infused in story, fiction writing.
right.
You use it as a tool there because it's
It
so
is a tool,
ubiquitous.
but the change is amazing. So
Mhm.
so
Well, so
that
the thing is, we all don't wanna be a character in a story. Character in stories have lots of problem and conflict. That's why it's a story. You don't have a story without conflict.
yeah
We generally don't wanna be those people. We wanna watch them go through what they're going through so we can glean some knowledge and learning from their arc as a character,
yeah.
but
Uh,
going through it's not fun.
no, it's not fun. And again, the problem is we go through life unaware of what's ruling us.
Mhm.
You know, uh, and so I've done some. Some of the training I had was of learning to recognize the fruit and see where the root is, what
Mhm.
led to it. Right.
Well, you'll know them by the fruit.
So
Yeah.
this behavior, what's at the root of this thing? And so when you talk to people, I said, well, what's the first time you started feeling that way?
Mm.
Happened on a trip in to Brazil we took last September. I mean, yeah, September. Joyce was praying with uh, a uh, a young man, big guy, huge, and I can't remember the exact thing she was praying for, and he just said, "I can't, I just can't get over this sense of guilt, he was
Mm.
carrying." And she'll just ask a simple question. When was the first time you started feeling that? We're not psychologists. We just,
Yeah.
but he said, I don't know. And then he said, oh, it happened when I was 16. And he knew exactly. He said, my father was abusing my mom and I had to turn him into the police
Mm.
and they took him away. And I've been felt guilty ever since.
Hmm.
That was the root that if I do the right thing, I'm going to live with this guilt.
Mhm. So that guilt was in effect, like, it was causing him to do other things that he would feel guilty about in other
Yeah, I
areas
was
of his
tapping
life.
into that.
Yeah.
And yet he was a 16-year-old trying to protect his mom.
Mhm.
Uh, so these things typically influence us without us knowing it.
Mhm.
And so the Lord revealed it. He just remembered that. So he began to uh, pray with that about that and began to get some healing from it. But
Yeah.
it was learning to walk in that is where we're
Yeah.
trying to hit. But those are a couple of. Uh, there's a guy named Jeff Floyd who's got a book regarding inner healing and freedom. Um, uh, don't know if I've got a definitive one that I've kind of picked up a whole lot here and there,
Yeah, it's little pieces.
little pieces. Yeah.
Yeah. So you said you write the book, and then you'll have it all collected together.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Except for had the ability to write, it'd be good.
Now you can find people who will do the writing for you.
Yeah.
You have ChatGPT write
Yeah,
it for you now.
ChatGPT. Yeah.
Yeah, you just give it the ideas.
Yeah.
So.
A friend of mine wrote a book, and I think it took him 102 minutes, and he wrote a 60-page book.
Yep. Yep.
I'm not sure what it said, but
It was a lot of regurgitated. I don't know.
I've never tried
Some
it.
of it feels original, some of it doesn't. But it's a predictive text mechanism, a highly efficient.
It is, and it's
predictive
got some
text
good
mechanism.
things.
But all right. Well, thank you, John.
Thank you.
It's been a good
I've
conversation.
enjoyed spending time with you.
All right.
Thanks.
All right. Well, Ben, how you doing back there?
Doing good.
Good. Where are we available?
We are available on Twitter at CTAS_podcast, on YouTube, Christians Talking About Shit, and anywhere podcast.
We did tell you the name of the
Found.
I
podcast,
did.
right?
You
Okay,
did.
we knew that.
I knew that.
John,
You didn't hide it from
we
me.
didn't hide that.